So Davis,
So Ro.
guess what?
What?
We have another leaf pile submission.
Yes, we do.
All the way from Belgium.
Brussels.
Brussels, man. We have reach, man.
I know.
Beyond the pond.
Who knew that?
Who knew?
And when I was looking at the data, we were getting a lot of traction all over Europe lately.
Are we?
Yeah, there's a couple spots there.
We're like the
that
Beatles,
reaching.
man.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. But
We haven't crossed over in the U.S. yet.
no,
but it's okay.
We're gonna get there.
We're gonna get there someday.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there.
I want to hit Australia. I feel like
Why?
I don't know. I feel like we'll reach some people there.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of variety in things in Australia.
What, like the spiders?
The wildlife, yeah.
The wildlife.
Yeah.
That's one reason why I'm never going to Australia.
Same. That's like the only reason I'm never going to
when
go to Australia.
they named a spider Huntsman.
I know. Like, who does that?
They didn't even call sharks Huntsman.
I feel like it's gonna be a giant tarantula my size,
yeah,
coming right up to my door with like a spear and a shield.
Absolutely, yeah.
Being like, you know what time it is. I'm here for you.
I'm gonna kill you.
I'm gonna.
And they just show up in your house like they're treated,
just like, oh, look
like
at that.
flies.
Look at that. There's a huntsman.
There's
in
a
the
huntsman.
House. Let's shepherd it out of here.
Yeah, with a broom.
Literally, just like, okay, time for you to go outside now.
My masculinity will disappear immediately.
Literally,
if I see a huntsman spider.
Kidding me? I'm burning this place down. Yeah.
It's your house now.
Yeah, it's like you win.
Here's the lease.
You win. He's at
It's
least
all you.
I had it over here. The spider's like, thank you.
Yeah, you keep the wife and kids and the dog.
I'm good. You don't
all
have to
you.
tell him where just tell him that you ate me.
Wow. Okay.
But
leaf pile.
This isn't about Australia though.
Yeah.
This is about Belgium.
This is about Belgium.
Shout out Belgium.
Shout out to Belgium. From Thibaut. Greetings from Brussels. I have listened to every episode. My favorite is possibly the Watchers episode.
Of course it is.
For my question, has there ever been a movie that annoyed you? Can't wait to hear soon. Thibaut.
Love this question.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
All right, so what's a movie that has annoyed you?
Okay. Well, so I'm gonna give a little bit of background to this.
Okay.
So the number one movie that I think has annoyed me more than any film isn't a movie that I even think is horrible or like that bad even. There's so many redeeming qualities, but that movie is Spectre. The James Bond film,
yeah.
Spectre, came out in 2015.
Yeah.
And so to add the background, when I was a kid, I loved the James Bond films. I had an old friend of mine who was one of my closest childhood friends who unfortunately several years ago now passed away. And we used to get together and watch Jurassic Park and the James Bond movies, Harry Potter, and we would just love these movies. And so we grew really attached because of the James Bond films. And I've seen all of them. Most of them really from like the Roger Moore or Sean Connery era. I have the biggest recollection of like all of those films from that era, those eras, but Tim Dalton and Pierce Brosnan and of course Daniel Craig, I remember in spades. And so I was very much loving the Daniel Craig era as the films were releasing. Casino Royale to this very day is one of my all-time favorite action movies. And there's, a lot of ups and downs in that era of James Bond. But upon the announcement that Spectre was going to be the fourth Bond film in the Daniel Craig era, coming off of the massive success of Skyfall, which is one of not just the best Bond films in the Craig era, but one of the best Bond films of all time, in my opinion.
I would agree.
And then you have Sam Mendes returning from Skyfall to direct this new film. And if you know Spectre, then you know that this is like the foe, that this organized foe of James Bond from the older eras of like Sean Connery.
From the books.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, from all of Ian Fleming's books. And I was stoked because I knew that this was going to be a big, big deal. and they were going to have to do something really new and creative with it. And then they cast Christoph Waltz, the legendary Christoph Waltz, to play the villain Franz Oberhauser in the film. And that man was born to play a Bond villain, in my opinion. And then they brought in Léa Seydoux to play the Bond girl for the film. And they were just going to make all of the films start to connect to one another in this way. And I was just absolutely insane. I was so excited. And then the first 10 minutes of the movie happen, and it's brilliant. There's this great tracking shot because the movie is shot by the brilliant cinematographer Hoyt van Hoytema, and it looks great. The opening spectacle is great. I love the Sam Smith song for the opening credits, and then the rest of the movie happens after all that. And it was kind of all downhill from there for me because the plot was a disaster. It was messy. Nothing made sense to me. It felt like Daniel Craig was kind of phoning it in. Every single twist quote in the movie was way too predictable, and the dialogue was just atrocious throughout the entire movie. And it ran for 2.5 hours long, and by the end of the movie, I was taught a very valuable lesson of managing your expectations. Because, again, I don't even think this movie's horrible, but because all the technical elements are great, cinematography and production design are gorgeous in this movie. They put a lot of time and effort into creating the movie from a production standpoint, but by the end of the film, I was like, this plot was so weak, it made absolutely no sense. The acting felt like it was being phoned in by many people in this cast, and I really did not care for it. And I was massively disappointed. And to answer the question of it being annoying, almost every line of dialogue in that movie just kept annoying me, because I'm just like, who the fuck talks like that? Who says that? Why is what was Léa Seydoux? Madeline Swan, I think was her character's name. Yeah. Why is she telling James Bond she loves him after like a day of knowing this guy? Which isn't necessarily from like older era James Bond movies that unrealistic. But this is like what I admired so much about the Craig era, particularly in Casino Royale, was that it felt like it was trying to ground itself in reality a lot more, akin to something like the way the Dark Knight trilogy does with Batman. And that was the movie where I was just like, all this falls off the rails now. This doesn't work for me. And I was very annoyed throughout that entire movie because I just felt myself trying to give it the benefit of the doubt, trying to be like, okay, there's a reason they're doing this. Then the movie kind of ends with one of the most massive explosion ever put on film.
Yeah,
I think
at the lair, right?
Yeah, to Oberhauser's lair.
Fuck spoilers for that movie, by the way.
I don't care. Yeah. I mean, and then the movie just kept going for another 20 minutes just so they could give Oberhauser his classic Blofeld look, which was like, again, one of the biggest twists that I saw coming the second I stepped into that theater.
You know what was just shocking by the end of that movie? I was appalled, honestly, by Spectre.
I understand.
I'm a big fan of James Bond, too. I've seen every movie as well. When James Bond is shooting at Blofeld's helicopter at the end, and no gun is working, and he pulls out his little Walter PPK, just as that's Bond's signature gun, but you're asking the audience to really believe, oh yeah, this little basically pea shooter has the stopping power to like knock down
this attack
helicopter.
Yeah.
Come on. It was.
This is where I'm just like, this movie is like subverting reality way too much. It's lost that groundedness that I admire so much about the first three, and it's not backing it up with any interesting plot.
It would be like if the Christian Bale Batman movies, just in the third one, if it became like, I don't know, like the Schumacher Batman movies with George Clooney, right? Like it just became so like
silly,
campy,
just super campy and super silly, and in so many ways Spectre does feel silly. I think that the only part that I really remember the most about that movie that I was just like fully in was like Dave Bautista's in it too. He plays Mr. Hinks, the henchman. He's great because he doesn't. Sequence. The trains exactly. The train sequence where he shows up out of nowhere, kicks the table in front of Bond and Madeline Swan, and just starts an awesome fight with James Bond on the train. That's the best scene in the movie, and Bautista doesn't say anything throughout the entire movie. He's just like the nameless, faceless, talkless henchman, but he still does he's like one of the better actors performing in the movie.
Yeah, and even that's a callback to other movies, right? There's a ton of train fights in the Bond movies.
Tons of
train.
It's
the one with Jaws, and then there's the one from Russia with Love.
From Russia with Love, yeah.
Right. So, and then the sort of mute henchman.
Yeah.
That's been done before too,
Exactly.
right? But definitely he's a bright spot in a very
annoying movie. Yeah. So like, what's your answer here?
Okay. You know what? When I was thinking about this, I also thought of Spectre. I also I thought about No Time to Die. That movie made me suffer, but
fair.
I have to go with Batman versus Superman.
Oh, okay.
Just a little context. Growing up, I loved the Justice League cartoon on Cartoon Network. I watched Batman. I watched Superman cartoons, like just the movies growing up. Even the Superman movies from the 80s with Christopher Reeve. When I first heard about Batman v Superman, it just was like, man, it feels like the world has just blessed me with this great thing, and all I have to do is wait 4 years. Whatever, dude. I get to see Batman and Superman battle it out on the screen. This is amazing. Waited this long time.
Yeah. Get
into the theater, and mind you, I was already afraid because I just was not impressed with Man of Steel. I don't mind what's his face as Superman, but Henry Cavill, but Zack Snyder's vision for these superheroes just didn't feel right. And so I was a little just anxious, still excited, but anxious about Batman v Superman because, man, I love the characters. I love the properties. They're so amazing. After watching it, I think I sat in the movie theater until the guy cleaning up the theater asked me to like leave because they had to do the next showing, right?
Like you were in shock.
I was in shock. Just like, how did they fuck this up? Just like, I was in such shock, bro. I went the next day. It was like, I can't believe that
that's
I didn't like this.
That's how I felt about Suicide Squad.
The
first Suicide Squad movie,
dude.
Yeah.
For Suicide Squad, I went back immediately.
Right?
It's like, no,
I was just like, run that back.
Run that.
Did I see that right?
What? No, you showed me a fake movie.
I did the same thing with Spectre as
really?
well, too.
Yeah.
I went the next day because I was just like, ain't no way that was that bad.
Well, because you build so much anticipation for these movies, and you're not paying money to be disappointed and annoyed. Exactly. You want to enjoy it, and so all that anticipation, there's just no way No, actually, there was movies I've actually enjoyed and I anticipated enjoying them, but no, I think that Zack Snyder just does not get these superheroes. He just wants to do weird, crazy shit with them, and it's like Batman shoots a gun. What the hell? Has he never read a comic book? Has he never watched
it's basically
one of the...
like if just like some fraternity kid gained a bunch of money and was just like, oh, let's get these strong, muscular dudes to just duke it out on screen, but they're dressed as the most popular superheroes you can think of.
It's terrible.
It's like, okay, this is a frat boy's wet dream of what these characters look
goodness,
like.
Davis. Yeah, this is a family show, man. Come on.
No, it ain't.
No, it's not.
I mean, you can listen. I mean, we're funny, but
no, but even at the end there are some. Look, I love just dumb, schlocky like man shit, right? So when Batman takes a fucking like bathroom sink out of the wall and smashes Superman over the head, I was like, okay, this is what I like. This was what Romanus came to see,
real,
baby.
That's real. Use your environment. This is like a video game now.
I could just watch. I could have watched just them fighting in a bathroom or a kitchen, just using appliances to beat each other.
It's kind of funny because it's a movie called Batman v Superman, and their actual confrontation, like physical confrontation in the movie, is probably the least interesting fight that happens in the entire movie.
You think so?
Oh yeah, like the warehouse fight with Batman.
That was dope. That's
by far the best fight in the movie.
Yes.
And just the epicness of the Doomsday fight at the very end, I think is a lot more entertaining than Batman and Superman actually fighting.
I have to disagree.
There's like one part in that fight that was actually like this, like you like that sync moment. I love the moment where Superman is regaining his powers and Batman's just like wailing on him with his fist, and then he's slowly able to stop landing a punch before he's just hitting steel. And then Superman just looks at him and he's just like, I'm back.
Yep.
You fucked up.
No, I think
I feel you. I feel you.
It's an annoying movie.
It is.
We should talk about, because you actually like Batman.
I hate Man of Steel, but I do like Batman v Superman.
Man of Steel. By the end, I was like, wow, this is just an assault on my senses.
That movie was just too much.
Yeah, it's Superman 9/11.
Good 40-minute start to it, and then it just ends up being a bunch of incomprehensible action. So I hear you. I hear you on Batman v Superman, but I do like that movie. So, our friend out there.
Yes, Tebow.
Thank you for asking us this question.
Yeah, hopefully you liked our answer.
Yeah, I hope that you I'm interested to know what your answer would be. So if you're hearing this, write us back. Let us know what your answer would be. We'd just be delighted to hear.
Absolutely.
We'd be delighted to hear that. So thank you, as always, for writing in.
And if others would like to write in too and offer a question to the leaf pile that you would like us to answer on this podcast, you can send us an email at looseleafmedia95@gmail.com. Again, looseleafmedia95@gmail.com. In the subject line, just put leaf pile.
And that way, we will know what you're here for.
Absolutely.
And today, we already know what you're here for. As always, this is the Loose Leaf Media Podcast. Welcome back. My name is Davis Leaf. I'm here with my co-host,
Romanus.
And this was an episode that I have been waiting ever since we started this to make, honestly, because I have wanted to do a deep dive on Yorgos Lanthimos films for a very long time. And we just went and saw his new film the other day, Kinds of Kindness, which will be the subject of what we're talking about today. So let's get into it. I am ready to do a full expose, baby. I'm ready to do that on full expose on my entire Yorgos Lanthimos experience. And I apologize in advance because I'll probably be hijacking a large portion of this conversation between
Nothing
Romanus
unusual for you. We know how loquacious you are.
Loquacious.
Yes.
Very nice word. Very good.
Thank you.
Well, today I've come with some stats that I think I kind of want to start with here. I have a few points that I want to go off of following that, but
before then, should we just read a short summary of Kinds of Kindness?
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay. Kinds of Kindness is an absurdist black comedy anthology film described as a triptych fable. The film consists of 3 separate stories with similar themes of control, identity, and desperation.
I want to kind of add a little bit of context to that because a triptych fable, in a sense, is like, so triptych style of art it's Roman, and it's when a film or a picture or a painting or something presents itself in 3 panels side by side, or composes something presented in 3 parts, which adds context to the film being an anthology with 3 separate stories. And a fable is very often just some sort of mythology that has a lot of animalistic qualities to it, like very literally. And I think this film really lends itself well to that description as a triptych fable, because there's a lot of animal-related symbolism in the film.
Is there?
Well, think about the end of... think about the second story in the movie.
Okay.
Like with the dogs. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And
continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
But I want to do a quick little bit of a lesson. And for anybody that really hated our introduction on philosophy during the Bike Riders review, you're about to hate this even more.
Okay.
So I kind of want to break down Yorgos Lanthimos' style, which is usually employing some sort of absurdist or surrealist quality to it. And in order to do that, I kind of had to, read up a little bit on what these art styles are and how they represent. So I pulled a little bit of an excerpt from an essayist named Periwinkle Seljord. And it reads as, absurdist writing focuses on the inherent purpose of life being elusive or questioned, can use dark humor to comment on the human condition and explores themes of existentialism and purposelessness, i.e., nihilism. Surrealism is marked by disjointed and occasionally fantastic imagery, irrational juxtaposition, and can be dreamlike. While absurdism is a philosophy, surrealism is more of a creative tool. Surrealism is often used to assist the absurdist objective by emphasizing the incomprehensible, confusing, and irrationality of nature and life, but can be used outside of absurdism as well. To break that down a little bit further, bear with me here. Bear with me. I have to say this out loud too to like make sense of it because this movie was confusing, intentionally so, I would say. But I pulled out my old art textbook to also
this man
kind of
has a textbook on a podcast,
and it reads that surrealism, a movement in literature and visual arts that developed in the mid-1920s and remained strong until the mid-1940s. Based upon revealing the unconscious mind in dream images, the irrational and fantastic, surrealism took two directions: representational and abstract. Now,
this is a lecture.
This is a lecture. I came wanting to like educate myself a little bit more today and just like educate the listeners because
we'll learn today.
Well, one of the biggest points of our podcast is I really like to do explorations and thematic.
Yes, there's drilling outside. Oh we're gonna educate you, and there's somebody they're just drilling two boards together.
That guy has been literally working on that car in the middle of the road for 2 days. I've literally fantasized about methods of killing him with his own drill.
Can we leave this in? Let's leave this in.
Sure. I mean, it's people can hear it less now that we're talking about it.
Oh, you're right.
So sorry. I apologize for the noise outside the classroom. They're doing renovations class. I appreciate your patience. But these types of styles are employed in almost every single Yorgos Lanthimos film. I've seen not all of them. There's a couple of blind spots that I have, but I have seen most of his films. Stemming from his first film I've seen, Dogtooth, which was released in 2009, which was followed by a film called Alps, that I did not see that one. But then that was followed with a movie called The Lobster in 2015, which is where he really started to gain a lot more popularity, especially amongst like indie film watchers. And then he followed that one up with Killing of a Sacred Deer, and then he gained his first kind of like accolades for the movie The Favorite in 2018. And then last year, Darling of the Academy was a little film called Poor Things. And now we are here with Mr. Lanthimos following up his very highly acclaimed film Poor Things a mere 6 months later with Kinds of Kindness. And I don't know if the movie I would call my favorite Lanthimos film, but I think it might be my favorite film of the year so far.
Wait, what did you just say?
Yeah, I've sat with it for a couple of days since we saw it, and I'm just like, I am beyond fascinated with not just Lanthimos' mind, but the way that he constructed this film.
Wow.
And his last two films, Poor Things and The Favorite, were Academy darlings, but they were also the movies that saw him deviate a little bit more from his style. Sure. With like movies like Dogtooth, The Lobster, Killing of a Sacred Deer, and now Kinds of Kindness. He was the writer, the co-writer for this movie that he wrote with his other writer, Efthimis Philippou. I may have pronounced that.
Philippou?
Philippou.
Philippou.
Something like that.
Philippou?
I may have butchered that. I don't even know if it's French.
Enchanté?
I may have butchered that, but he collaborated with this person as a writer for Dogtooth, Lobster, Killing of a Sacred Deer, and Kinds of Kindness. But he worked exclusively as a director for Poor Things and The Favorite, where Tony McNamara was the co-writer with Deborah Davis for The Favorite, and Tony McNamara was the sole writer for Poor Things, which was the only film out of all of these that was an adaptation.
Right.
And that leads us to Kinds of Kindness, and it feels like it's the full culmination of everything that Yorgos Lanthimos is good at. Because while he didn't unite with his writer for the past two films, he got back in the writer's room and united with his original collaborator for most of his films, but saw him employ the same musical composer and cinematographer from Poor Things, and that same cinematographer was also on The Favorite. So I see this as a full culmination of everything he's capable of, and I love when a very, very well-established director swings for the fences, does something so ambitious, so massive, and leaves most of what is on the screen open for interpretation. It reminded me of the film Babylon from a year and a half ago, Damien Chazelle's Babylon, a massive, like, ambitious film with a lot to pick apart about it. Can easily be skewed as controversial or polarizing, but for me, just how thought-provoking Kinds of Kindnesses just fully worked for me, and I loved pretty much everything about it.
Yeah, this movie was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
No,
Interesting.
No,
I love that.
I don't feel that.
Can you imagine?
No, I said that for jokes.
That was good.
Thank you. No, just as context, I'm not a huge fan. I've only seen The Lobster though, right? Like I just, and honestly, even with The Lobster, I sort of like fell into that. I was just watching a movie with a group of friends, and
Sure.
then I just realized, what the hell am I watching? Right? There's not even a way that I can explain Yorgos movies. I think it's one of those things where you just have to go and see. Even if I described a scene to someone, I don't think words are enough. You just have to go and watch it for yourself, and with whatever personal interpretation you have, it is what it is.
I agree.
And that's what I would say about Kinds of Kindness. In particular, I think that it's gonna be a movie that his fans will enjoy. It just sort of is kind of lost on me. I don't know. Maybe I'm usually a big fan of dark humor and sort of, just dark comedy, dry humor, but
a lot of deadpan humor.
There's a lot of
pretty much
oh
every
my
single
God.
one of his movies are exclusively utilizing deadpan styles of humor.
Yeah, I think the movie. It's interesting that you had such a. It's funny that you've done all this research, and I'm just like, it's okay, and I think that's okay, right? Like, not every movie has to have a profound impact on everybody, right?
I absolutely agree.
Some movies are gonna.
It's always subjective.
It's always subjective, right? And is it a bad movie? No, it's just not my taste, and so, like, I'm probably. It's just if you're a Yorgo fan, by all means, go see this movie. You will enjoy it. If you enjoyed The Lobster, I mean, God bless you.
Yeah.
But like, just right. It also feels like a movie where you said that in his last two movies, he sort of stepped away from the absurdity that probably would I've seen in the Lobster.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
It's there, but it's not like Yorgos absurdity. It's his style of absurdity, I would say. Because he's not the writer for the last two movies, and for that reason they make more sense. I mean, The Favorite is like kind of it's biographical, and a lot of it is kind of, a lot of the information that's in the movie is partially hearsay, but it's a lot more biographical for that reason. And Poor Things is a fantasy. It's like this steampunk Victorian era fantasy that's kind of like almost like a Frankenstein type of story.
Yeah.
And I've described that movie as Barbie for adults.
Wow.
And it's fantastic. It's a great movie. It was one of my favorites of last year.
Maybe I'll see it tonight because it's on Hulu.
Yeah. It's not something that I think is like easily, it's not for everybody like any of his films, I would say. I do remember when I saw this movie, out of the 2 times I saw it in theaters, I did see some people walk out. And
wow.
I even got that sensation that people were going to do that when we saw Kinds of Kindness, because we had some people making some comments in the movie because they were just appalled by what they were seeing.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And it doesn't surprise me, but these, like, Yorgos has gained a lot of traction amongst his fans, and I think his fans are so passionate about the work that he puts out, it helps kind of uplift his social capital in the film world. And so he's able to promote his films on larger platforms, and it gets people in seats a lot easier for that reason. And then they sit down and they don't even fucking realize what they just walked into. Yeah. This isn't your average Emma Stone movie that you're about to walk
Nope.
in that's like easily digestible or anything.
Nope.
You're watching all of these actors do some crazy ass shit.
Yeah, this ain't La La Land.
This is not La La Land. This is not Cruella.
No, it's not. I was thinking about the movie, and I tried to get a sense of just any sort of underlying theme, because it's essentially 3 short stories in this film, and the actors play different characters in each of the 3 stories, right? So there's no, there's only one recurring.
There's one overlap, and it is one character
called RMF,
and every single story is named after RMF in some way.
Right. So there is the death of RMF. RMF is flying, and RMF eats a sandwich. So
and
you see
the inclusion of this character gets funnier and funnier every single time too.
Does it?
I think it does.
Well, I mean,
especially in the last chapter.
Oh, sure.
So when you're talking about themes in the movie, as I've sat with it, I think what I was able to take away from this movie were the very satirical themes about characters trying to prove their love and their worth in some sort of a way, which is, a very grounded and relatable theme. But, there's obviously a lot of absurdity to the way that these characters try to prove that sense of love and worth to one another. But that is kind of the point, I think, is how the absurd lengths that we go to in order to prove our self-worth to another person or to prove our love to another person. And I view the film kind of as like a puzzle with several pieces intentionally removed from the box that's forcing you to draw your own conclusions about what it all means.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
I think the pointlessness of them, this is going to sound so pretentious, but I actually think that the pointlessness of this movie is the point.
I would agree. I have in my notes that I feel like the real recurring theme of this movie is the futility of life. Where the first part is, it feels like the futility of wanting freedom. The second, the futility of love, and the last, the futility of religion. And just,
I think that there is like a singular theme that you can attach, or a subject that you can attach to every single story for that reason too.
Yeah,
and I like the way that you say religion, because the third one definitely has that
for sure, right? And it feels futile trying to really dig deep into this movie, just because the themes are a kernel in the movie. There's definitely something going on, but there's so much ludicrousness.
It's so ridiculous
that it's hard to follow along, and I will say that will frustrate some people.
If you're expecting this movie to make sense, and not like you're walking into like Inception or something, and you just walk out just like, I know that this does make sense, I just don't know how to make sense of it.
Yeah.
If you're expecting that going into this movie, you'll be very disappointed.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if this movie is supposed to make sense even.
No, even you
according to Lanthimos.
You having the textbook is so funny to me, because it's just
It's like almost like it almost speaks to my own personal desperation of trying to make sense of the movie in some fashion. But the biggest conclusion I can draw is that this movie's point is not to make sense.
Yeah, I mean, even there's a lot of desperation in the characters of this movie. Even
almost every single like main character feels this sense of desperation, especially Jesse Plemons in the first one.
Let's get into that.
Which is so pathetic, but it's hilarious.
And I will say, I feel like the cast of this movie is the strength of it.
It shows the range and the variety of acting capabilities that every single actor has, and that's also kind of the point. Because when's the last time you've even seen like an anthology film?
I can't recall.
I know, like they don't like anthology films aren't made like that anymore.
Well,
like I think about like Sin City or something.
Yeah, but even then, there is a plot. There are characters, and they do have interactions together. That it's interesting. There's an overall theme.
Yeah,
this movie,
like the plot changes in every story, like every 15 minutes.
There are different stories with there's some shared themes, but other than that, they're completely different. Let's go about one by one.
One by
How
one.
about that?
That
And then
sounds
that
great.
way,
We can break it down a little bit.
yes. So, let's get into the first part, which is my favorite part: the death of RMF.
Interesting.
Essentially, Jesse Plemons is playing this worker in this company, and he has a very controlling boss, played by Willem Dafoe. And there are some, without spoiling the movie, there are some hijinks that come along when maybe Jesse Plemons
he essentially is asked to do something by his boss that he refuses to do, and everything after that just uproots his life.
Sure.
And a lot of crazy stuff comes of it.
Yeah, even it helps to be vague with this movie, right? It's really
Because that's one of the biggest things I like about Yorgos Lanthimos films is even his titles are abstract. Like you have to make your own kind of like meaning of them because they don't perfectly relate to what you are seeing on screen, and that applies to almost every single one of his films. Like The Lobster, Killing of a Sacred Deer, Dogtooth, Kinds of Kindness, Poor Things. Like they don't say the titles in a lot of those movies.
no. But I do feel like Kinds of Kindness, like The Lobster, I understand the title.
Yeah,
Kinds
because
of
that's an
Kindness,
exception where they actually say it.
Kinds of Kindness, I have no idea why they called it this. I don't know why it's the title.
I think it speaks to like the idea that there are these characters that are trying to like. There's a lot of gifting that occurs in this movie that people are expecting to gain something from.
Okay.
Especially in that first chapter with the thing.
The thing.
You know.
That thing. No, okay. I feel like I've ruined the summary of Death of RMF.
We'll recover.
Yeah, it's okay. You know what? I actually enjoy this story the most just because I feel like the plot is easier to follow.
It's definitely the easiest one to follow, even though it still kind of ends very abruptly, and you're just like, what?
I came in not knowing that this movie was an anthology, so to me, I was even more shocked that we just go to a different story with the same actors playing different characters. I was like,
but I love that it like bills everybody that and which character they played at the very end of each one, so it just feels like it's concluding. It's just like, and that was that. Next, RMF is Flying is the second one. And I did not even, until you explained it to me after the movie, I didn't even know why it was called that. And then I laughed so hard after I figured it out because I was just like, oh, that's so stupid. That's so dumb that I love it.
But real quick though, Death of RMF, I do like Jesse Plemons' role in that story. It feels like his delivery, even just his physicality, and just being really awkward and uncomfortable. This movie doesn't work if those actors can't deliver these absurd lines.
I think he just gives my favorite performance in the movie
in
general.
For sure.
Out of the entire cast. And this is a cast full of great performances.
Oh, yeah. And even Willem Dafoe, in this one, he's definitely just menacing in a way without being aggressive. He was also
he's just
very
passive aggressive.
And he definitely gave a good performance in this one. Emma Stone,
she's not in this one. She's not in the first one much.
Not much, but she is in it.
I think she gets better
throughout the movie
with everyone.
Sure.
And I think my favorite performance of hers out of all three stories is in the third one.
Well, you know what I like about how this movie is structured is that it feels like Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone switch hands as far as like playing the main character, right? So even halfway through the second part, RMF is Flying. It halfway through that story
shifts perspectives,
and the focus is on the Emma Stone. Should we just talk about RMF is Flying? Do you want to talk about that one?
I mean, RMF is Flying. That one's kind of harder to explain. They get harder to explain.
Yeah, you explain. I was butchering it. You go.
RMF is Flying is just kind of about this police officer
played by Jesse Plemons,
whose wife has disappeared, and she's played by Emma Stone, and then when she reappears, he senses that something is off with her. And that's the story of that one.
Yeah.
And this there's some moments in the early part of the story that are so outlandishly funny that are so I did not expect it to happen. And I mean I would say that about most of the movie. Most of the humor is like pretty out of nowhere and pretty funny.
Actually, you know what? This is when the movie became sort of shocking and off-putting for me.
This particular chapter has some fucked up shit.
I even
like the most messed up thing that happens in the first story is like the very, very end of it when you know the part, yeah. But yeah, there's a myriad of fucked up things that happen in this one.
I even in the middle of the movie theater, I just screamed, "Fuck!"
Yeah, I remember exactly.
And everybody's looking at me like, "Are you new here?
Like,
people, is this your first Yorgos movie?
First Yorgos,
There's one scene. If you've seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. It happens in a kitchen with an RMF is flying, and it's so gory and shocking. For maybe this scene was so effective because you don't know what to expect in these absurd movies, right? Like there you can just be in a regular space like a bar or an office space and just it's very mundane. There's nothing really happening. Maybe an off the cuff remark, just that's sort of kind of awkward and cringe that might make you laugh or might make you like say what, and then maybe something a character just says something outrageous out of nowhere, and then the plot just goes in that direction. You're like, what the hell? We were just in normal world.
I know.
How the hell did we get right? Like,
so I mean, the personal way that I kind of describe what absurdity is in a film is just treating the abnormal as normal. And
oh my god, that's a perfect way to describe this movie.
That's kind of what the movie and what many Yorgos Lanthimos films do, but this movie in particular, it's constantly treating things that are like not normal as normal. And when you refer to that kitchen scene, the lead up to that moment, for the few minutes that lead up to that moment, you're just sitting there like, wait, what? What's about? Is that for real?
Yeah.
And then the for real moment happens, and you're just like, oh fuck, like you said in the theater.
Yeah, I feel bad for talking in the theater, but maybe
you mentioned this on the Midsummer review. Like you're responding accordingly, though.
Oh, okay.
And we were in a theater full of packed people, so clearly there was like another 200 people just as twisted in your thinking as they are.
That was nice to see a movie packed. This might be the one movie we've seen all year where I can confidently say maybe only one or two empty seats in the house.
It was nice. It was refreshing.
Yeah.
And it was just also nice to see, people coming out to support a Yorgos Lanthimos film like this too, because I wrote down some of like the budgets of his films.
They're pretty cheap.
Oh yeah. He makes his movies for like still indie budgets. Like his most expensive one, and it shows, was for Poor Things, which was $35 million, and that is like over double his second highest, which is tied with The Favorite and Kinds of Kindness. Before that, his movies were at most costing $4 million.
But they make a lot of money back.
And they do. He's made all of his money back with every single movie.
I think Poor Things made over $100 million.
Yes, it did. It made $117.5 million.
Hey,
I didn't memorize that. I actually have that written down. That'd be crazy.
And $35 million budget.
$35 million budget.
Okay, so they definitely made, especially if you include advertising.
Exactly.
Maybe you doubled up.
He's got his next movie that's going to be coming out in December of next year, where he's going to be reuniting with Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons.
Really?
Yeah.
Ugh.
And you don't like Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons?
No, I like them, but I wonder. The thing about Emma Stone, I feel like she is underutilized in this movie.
Really?
Yeah,
I disagree.
I mean, you're welcome to your opinion, even though it's wrong.
It's not, but that's okay.
I think that maybe her talents, because they come at the end of the movie, and also the pacing for this movie, I feel like is terrible.
Really?
Like it's a 2 hour 40 minutes movie.
It's a very long movie. It's better that you know that going into this movie too.
Yeah.
Because it probably would help any new person watching it get through the pacing a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's not in any form I would call a fast-paced movie whatsoever.
But by the time that we get to Emma Stone's, and maybe we can even talk about RMF Eats a Sandwich.
Yeah, we should probably
that's
touch
the third
on
part.
that now. Yeah.
So by the time we get to the third part, we've already been to 2 hours movie, and we've already seen so much, and it's also two short films essentially that we've seen that almost have nothing to do together other than they've been directed by the same person and has the same actors.
Yeah.
And I feel exhausted by the time we get to Emma Stone's main story. And so it's not to blame her, because she does a good job delivering the lines that she's given and playing the part that she's given. But I don't feel like the movie was structured to her benefit.
I know what you mean by that. Because she's like the biggest actor in this movie, arguably.
Yeah.
I mean, you got people like Willem Dafoe or
Right.
Jesse Plemons or even Hung Chow in this film, who are all...
Hung Chow was also underutilized.
I will always say that about Hung Chow on anything.
Yeah.
Even if she's the main character, I would still say underutilized, because she's that good to me. She's one of my favorite actors working today. But I think the payoff with how central Emma Stone is in the third story is worth the wait.
Okay.
Because I would probably say that the third story is my favorite out of all of them.
Wow.
And it's because it does have, I think, it's the most thematically dense for that reason. It's the most interesting, and it definitely leans fully into the surreal aspects of these stories. And there's increments of that in the second story.
Yes.
But the movie becomes more surreal with every single one of the stories.
I couldn't agree more. There's no surrealism in the first one.
No, I wouldn't say so.
I would say at the end of RMF is Flying, surrealism happens.
Very much so.
Right? And you're just like, and it just ends abruptly, and you're like, what the fuck is going on?
It ends abruptly with some of the craziest and most hilarious imagery you'll ever watch, and you're just like, what?
Yeah, this movie, I don't know.
It's
but you're a Yorgos fan, so it's okay that you like it. It's okay. Like that's to be expected from a director like this. And even me, like whatever Scorsese comes out with, I'm gonna go see it.
Of course, yeah.
Right? But yeah, I don't know. Also, let's just get to RMF Eats a Sandwich.
Let's get to I mean, basically this is like I was saying, it's very hard to explain the plot about each of these stories the further they go. This one I'm just like, okay, it's just about a cult, really. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I can't explain everything that happens in this without feeling like I'm spoiling it, because most of the moments in this are pretty essential to understanding what's going on, even though there is no true understanding of it. But it's about it's about a cult, and Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons are two members of this cult trying to find their footing within it.
Thank you for that, Davis.
That's how I would describe it.
Yeah.
And it's insane. It's an absolutely insane story. It's my favorite one, probably. A lot of themes of regret, trauma. Again, just trying to gain like a sense of acceptance and obedience. And particularly just going back to the proving your love and worth. Huge in this story, I think. With Emma Stone's character kind of being the newcomer in this cult. And has a lot to prove in order to gain acceptance from them. And Willem Dafoe plays the cult leader. He's great. He's insane. Hung Chow plays like the second in command of this cult. She's great as well. And then Margaret Qualley, who's also in this, she plays like two characters. She plays twins who are like kind of the core of the story, I would say. But yeah, it's great. It ends crazy, and then the rest of the movie ends.
I found this one harder to enjoy just because it, like I said, it was a poorly paced movie. So I feel like...
Were you a little bit like exhausted by that point in the movie too?
Well, also we saw this movie at 8 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock, right? And it's a 3-hour movie, so it just was.
And you just came off work.
Oh my god! Yeah. I drove all the way from Baltimore to Georgetown in DC, all for this goddamn podcast. No, but like, it's not that it wasn't good, and there's definitely funny parts, and there's, I think, some of the most shocking scenes in this movie.
Yeah.
They put Emma Stone's character through hell in this movie, and she does look she looks jaded. She sort of.
So I know that Yorgos pretty much filmed this with Poor Things back to back as well.
The whole movie.
Yes.
Okay.
And it took 2 months for him to film this movie, which is kind of shocking too, because it's like for as long as this movie is, you would expect a movie this long to be filmed over a longer period of time. But there's it's not an action movie with large set pieces.
Sure.
It's mostly just characters in really well designed rooms, just talking or doing nothing.
Yeah.
But Emma Stone's performance in Poor Things is just like, it's so fierce and it's so courageous and it's such a performance. When I watch this movie, it's weird that I still like her more in this movie, Kinds of Kindness, than Poor Things, because she feels like feels like she's playing a person and less of a character.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
And I haven't seen this type of acting from her in a very long time, I feel like, where I feel like this is she's playing characters that I feel like I could actually go up to or run into on the street. Mm-hmm. But it's still, the depth of the characters that she's playing in this movie are far deeper than anything I've seen her play in her entire career, really.
Yeah,
and, Poor Things is probably objectively her best performance just because of how fierce it is, but this might be my new personal favorite performance by Emma Stone. And I would say the same thing about Jesse Plemons. This might be my new personal favorite performance by him.
This, oddly, I haven't seen him in a ton of stuff, but I do like Jesse Plemons a lot in this movie. Mm-hmm. Willem Dafoe is good too. Like I said, man, I'm gonna have to disagree. I think like Emma Stone, this movie just doesn't serve her well, and maybe that's okay. Like, it's
like, in what way? Like the movie itself doesn't utilize her.
Yeah, the way that it's structured, I just feel like I almost didn't care about this part of the movie because it just felt so long. And I think the issue with an anthology movie where the stories are so disjointed mm-hmm. that there is no overall like plot to care about. Yeah. And so like our attention, so okay, now I have to completely throw out what story I just saw and pay attention to this other story. Sure. Yeah, right. And I just
can feel jarring for sure.
It oh my God. A lot of this movie felt jarring. And again, it could have something to do with me just not being a Yorgos fan. Mm-hmm. But I think with the long run time and with the absurd nature of his movies, it just did feel like, and the nature of an anthology movie where mm-hmm. the stories are just completely different. Even we call like the triptych art, like you were talking about. Mm-hmm. Like usually it's 3 panels where like the story it's one story, right? But it's 3 parts of one story.
It can be, mm-hmm. but speaking to surrealism as well, mm-hmm. like triptych art can be individualized as well. They can be 3 distinct stories with connective tissue or mm-hmm. no connective tissue whatsoever. They can just be their own thing, but it's meant to be represented and encapsulated in one frame. Okay. Which is, it's just a stylistic choice, really, mm-hmm. more than anything, like any art style quote. Right. But I think that the way the movie's shot is just so spectacular, well, with the 35 millimeter mm-hmm. anamorphic film lens.
It looks fantastic.
I love how like the dream sequences and mm-hmm. flashbacks are shot in black and white, mm-hmm. and I like how that's clear too, because a lot of movies can, like, black and white has made such a huge comeback in cinema over like the past half a decade, I think, mm-hmm. and sometimes it can't be entirely clear why a movie is even shot in black and white, especially if it's partially shot in color too. Mm-hmm. Poor Things is also partially shot in black and white, and for that movie, it's kind of like meant to represent this like enclosed world that the main character is facing until they leave this world and get to explore the world for themselves, and then things become more colorful, kind of like Wizard of Oz or something. Mm-hmm. But in this movie, it's meant to represent like flashbacks and dream sequences, which I think is pretty cool. I like that. I like the way that that's shot, and I love the insert shots in this movie too. Like anytime it's just like focusing on one particular like object, mm-hmm. I think it's framed and it's positioned really, really well. There's a lot of food shots and shit in this movie too.
Are there?
I think there was.
That's the thing. There's When you watch this movie, you're gonna focus on different things because we're just all different people. It's just there's things that you're bringing up where I'm like, really, did that happen? I was sitting looking at other shit, like just like, well, even right, like with RMF is flying.
I mean, you're the person that noticed it,
but at the same time, it's not something that's like completely obvious, right? Like it's just
it becomes less and less obvious with every story, I think, too.
Yeah.
To the point where, like, I'm not going to spoil this, but at the very end of RMF Eats a Sandwich, it just doesn't become clear why it's called that until literally the last shot of the entire movie. At that point, I actually forgot that it was called that title, and I had stopped looking for it. And I think that was also the point. The movie expected you to completely forget that, and it just reminds you why it was called that at the very end for literally no reason, but a bit.
Yeah, and I kept waiting because I'm like, yeah, there was no RMF is eating a sandwich in the story. Obviously there's some method to the madness, right? But it's nice that it does leave it up to the audience to interpret it as much as you want. There is a little of, themes that you can appreciate that it's trying to tell some sort of story in between all three of these disjointed mini movies within this triptych tale. But also, if you just want to see absurd comedy shit, fuck it, do it. Like I don't know. Maybe it's. Yeah, like I said, I'm not the audience for it, I think.
Yeah, that's completely understand. It, like, Yorgos films, and especially this one, not for everybody, and I totally get it.
No.
Like, I mean, I walked out of it, and I was like, that was hilarious. I love dark humor. It was slow, I didn't mind that, but I just more than anything appreciated the challenge of this film, of trying to make sense of something that's almost not meant to be made sense of. And I found that to be compelling.
A challenging film.
It's the most it's not the most, introspective movie I've seen this year whatsoever.
No, hell no.
But again, I feel like that's the point. Like almost the borderline pretentiousness of the movie is the point, and it wants you to feel like there's more to what you're seeing than there actually is. When you're just watching a very carefully crafted, outrageous film with a lot of dark humor and great performances. So that's kinds of kindness. It's for me. It's very reassuring when a movie is highly anticipated for me. Which this was my most anticipated movie of the summer, and it lived up to those expectations.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I'm happy for you.
I'm very happy because that doesn't happen often.
No, especially with me and Furiosa.
Yeah, I feel
Ouch.
Yeah, sorry, man.
Things are not going my way this year.
No, it hasn't. I'm not gonna lie though. I don't even think it's been the greatest year for movies. I never usually think that about the first half. Things don't really start to kick off until like that competitive festival season happens in the fall. But for the first half, it's just mostly trying to rev the engine, get people in seats, and see what's working and what's not working. And there's been a pretty decent amount of blockbusters this year. Which is why Dune 2, Planet of the Apes, Furiosa. So it was really cool to see a movie like Kinds of Kindness, which is it's heavily marketed, but still, a very type of independent movie from Yorgos Lanthimos, where the name is what you're going to be showing out for, not necessarily the movie itself, because it's not marketing itself even as anything.
No, it just shows its music and there's
like
Emma Stone dancing.
The first trailer for this movie was like probably one of the greatest teasers I've seen in a long time. I miss the days when teaser trailers would actually just be like a minute to a minute and 30 seconds and reveal absolutely nothing about the movie. And when that trailer was released, drew me to the movie, had Yorgos Lanthimos as a name attached to it and an amazing cast. And it's like, I don't want to know anything about this. I don't need to. I'm already there.
Would you recommend this movie?
I was seconds away from going highly. But then I'm just like, oh wait, hold up.
Exactly.
Who am I talking to? Yeah. So I would recommend this movie to people that are into the just absolute absurd, don't mind gratuitous sex and violence, and want something that they're not gonna forget. But I don't know. This is a hard movie to recommend. This might be the hardest movie to recommend out of everything that we've done on this podcast so far.
Even more so than The Watchers?
I mean...
Man, we keep shitting on that movie, man. That movie.
We need a worse movie to watch this year.
Oh my goodness. I mean, we'll probably get there.
We'll get there, I'm sure.
Why not?
I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine comes out in a month.
And there's still the M. Night Shyamalan movie that you can't wait to see.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see that.
I hope that it's a big fat turd.
Why do you hope that?
I wanna.
That's sick.
I'm sick.
Okay.
I'm a sick man.
Okay. I mean, what do I say to that?
No, but I think I would have to agree with you. Even it's nice that we get two opinions, right? We have a person who is familiar with the director and their style. I have seen a single movie and just not that impressed, but that's okay. I'm probably closer to like the everyday viewer that's just not as familiar with Yorgos.
Sure.
And his work. But I would say if you're a fan of the work,
yeah,
go see it. Absolutely.
That's the best way to put it, I would say. If you've been a fan of any of his films up to this point, you'll probably find some enjoyment out of this. But I still feel like this will be one of his most controversial and divisive films.
And I would say that
I kind of love that about it, though.
Yeah, that's fine. And I would say if you're at all curious, even though I haven't seen it, maybe go see Poor Things, because that was very critically acclaimed and probably a little more palatable than this movie.
Yeah, it'll ease your entry into this movie.
Like, go see Poor Things. I think I'm gonna watch Poor Things tonight.
Yeah, Poor Things is great. This one is not as easily digestible as Poor Things at all. Poor Things is I wouldn't even call Poor Things straightforward, but it is far more straightforward than this movie.
There was a part in this movie, and I guess we're not gonna go into spoilers for this episode, but yeah,
I mean, if it's a movie that I feel like is meant for you to draw your own conclusions, I feel like we've already said too much. But the less you know, the better. Like you said, if you've liked any of Yorgos films, I'd recommend this movie.
There was a part in this movie where I legit was just shocked. Like, my hand was covering my mouth and just was like, it's hard not to spoil this movie.
It is.
But I was the only one that was shocked in the movie theater at this one scene, which I think if I say
I kind of remember
the scene,
I do remember the scene.
Right. I think if I say the scene, everyone would be like, "Oh, of course that would be shocking to see Romanus. You're not weird." Okay. No one else in the movie theater with me was just appalled. Fine. Or at least audibly.
We're all seasoned.
Right? Oh, no. My goodness. Oh, boy. Anyway, but then fast forward, there's another scene which, maybe is a little startling. It's, should we even... I'm really not offering anything by saying this, but...
Look, go check out this movie.
Go check out the movie.
Make your own opinions. I want to hear what people think about this movie. Let's get the conversation going on Kinds of Kindness, because I think there is a ton of discussion to be had with this movie.
And how can they reach out to us, Davis?
Well, I'll tell you, as Romanus stated at the beginning of this episode, why don't you just go ahead, type in our email, which is looseleafmedia95@gmail.com, put the words leaf pile in the subject line, and leave us any of your comments, questions, or criticisms. We would be happy to voice your criticism directly on our podcast and call you out.
Jesus.
No, not even. But I do want to hear from you guys. We want to hear from you guys. We want to hear what you have to say about this movie. We want to hear what you have to say about other movies. And we want to hear any questions that you have for us to answer directly on our podcast. And as always, this has been another episode of Loose Leaf Media. My name is Davis Leaf. I was here with my co-host today,
Romanus.
And we will see you guys soon on the next one.
Bye.
Take care.